Hello, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most astonishing military maneuvers of the war in Ukraine, a devastating ambush that obliterated 482 Russian vehicles in a matter of seconds. This event has shocked analysts, stunned the Kremlin, and once again demonstrated Ukraine's evolving mastery of modern warfare. What really happened in this so-called genius trap? How did Ukraine manage to lure such a massive Russian convoy into destruction? And what does this mean for the broader course of the conflict? Let's break it all down. The event took place in a critical area along the Eastern Front, where Russian forces had been attempting to make a breakthrough using a long armored column consisting of tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, supply trucks, and armored personnel carriers. For weeks, satellite images showed Russian units amassing near the contact line, clearly preparing for what they believed would be a decisive assault. But what they didn't know was that Ukraine had been carefully watching every movement, studying their routes, and setting up what would become one of the most destructive ambushes of the entire war. Ukraine's strategy was simple but brilliant: create the illusion of vulnerability. They allowed Russian forces to believe that a section of the front line was weak and poorly defended. Through the use of controlled retreats, fake signals, and disinformation spread through radio chatter and social media, Ukraine managed to convince Russian commanders that they had an opportunity for an easy advance. This psychological warfare was crucial. It made the Russians overconfident, pushing them to commit more troops and vehicles than they should have. Once the Russian convoy began to move in, Ukrainian intelligence and artillery units sprang into action. Using real-time data from drones, satellites, and reconnaissance teams, they tracked every vehicle entering the target zone. What appeared to be open terrain was, in fact, a deadly trap filled with hidden landmines, anti-tank obstacles, and precisely calibrated artillery coordinates. The moment the first Russian tanks crossed the kill zone, Ukrainian gunners unleashed a storm of destruction. Multiple launch rocket systems, precision-guided artillery, and kamikaze drones hit the convoy simultaneously. The air was filled with the sound of explosions as vehicles erupted into flames one after another. In less than a minute, chaos consumed the Russian column. Tanks were burning, trucks overturned, and soldiers fled in panic, only to be caught by machine gun fire and drone strikes. Drone footage later released by Ukrainian units showed the entire area littered with wreckage, smoke, and secondary explosions from ammunition detonating inside the destroyed vehicles. What made this ambush even more devastating was Ukraine's coordination between different branches of its military. Artillery units worked in tandem with electronic warfare teams to jam Russian communications and GPS signals. This left Russian commanders unable to coordinate a counterattack or retreat effectively. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones maintained constant visual contact, identifying surviving vehicles and directing artillery fire for precise follow-up strikes. It was modern warfare at its most efficient, a blend of intelligence, technology, and tactical cunning. Military experts from around the world were stunned by the level of sophistication Ukraine displayed. Many compared it to the ambush tactics used by NATO forces in past conflicts. Except here, it was executed by a country fighting for its survival under constant bombardment. The loss of 482 vehicles in one operation represents not just a material disaster for Russia, but also a massive psychological blow. Such losses are hard to replace, especially with Western sanctions limiting Russia's ability to produce or import key components for modern vehicles. According to Ukrainian sources, the ambush also resulted in the deaths or injuries of hundreds of Russian soldiers, including several senior officers. These officers were reportedly traveling with the convoy, expecting a swift victory and perhaps even filming propaganda footage of their advance. Instead, they walked straight into a firestorm that wiped out their entire formation. Some captured Russian soldiers later admitted that they had been misled by their own intelligence, which suggested Ukrainian forces were retreating from the area. Another key factor in this operation's success was Ukraine's innovative use of decoys and electronic deception. Before the ambush, Ukrainian engineers set up fake radar signatures, dummy artillery pieces, and false heat signatures to lure Russian surveillance drones into misreading the battlefield. By the time Russia realized the area was crawling with hidden defenses, it was far too late. The entire kill zone was pre-registered for artillery fire, meaning Ukraine's gunners could strike instantly without having to adjust their aim. After the ambush, Ukrainian sappers and engineers moved in to collect valuable intelligence from the wreckage. They found dozens of destroyed Russian tanks, including the T-90M, one of Russia's most advanced models. They also recovered captured communication equipment and documents that revealed detailed Russian plans for further offensives. This information allowed Ukraine to predict future Russian movements and prepare additional traps. In other words, this one operation didn't just destroy hardware, it shifted the momentum of the battlefield. The reaction in Moscow was one of fury and disbelief. Russian state media initially tried to downplay the scale of the loss, claiming that only a few vehicles were damaged. But as satellite images and videos from the scene began to circulate online, the truth became impossible to hide. Russian military bloggers, many of whom support the war, expressed outrage at the incompetence that led to such a disaster. Some even blamed the Russian high command for repeating the same mistakes over and over, underestimating Ukraine and failing to adapt to the modern style of warfare dominated by drones and precision strikes. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, the news was celebrated as a major victory. Social media was flooded with footage of the destroyed convoy, with Ukrainians hailing their soldiers as heroes. The operation became a symbol of how ingenuity and intelligence can overcome brute force. It reminded the world that despite being outnumbered and outgunned, Ukraine continues to find ways to exploit Russia's weaknesses. This ambush also highlighted how critical Western support has been to Ukraine's success. Many of the weapons used, such as HIMARS rocket systems, Excalibur guided shells, and advanced surveillance drones, came from NATO allies. But the real brilliance lay in how Ukraine used these tools. They weren't just handed high-tech weapons, they learned how to integrate them seamlessly into a coordinated system of warfare. The result was an operation that felt more like something out of a military textbook than a desperate act of defense. Experts suggest that this event will force Russia to rethink its strategies. For months, the Russian army has relied on massive armored columns and frontal assaults to push through Ukrainian defenses. But this ambush proves that such tactics are suicidal in modern combat, especially against a well-prepared and highly mobile opponent. Russia may now have to shift towards smaller, more flexible units or risk suffering more catastrophic losses like this one. In the bigger picture, this ambush shows how the war in Ukraine is evolving. Gone are the days when sheer numbers could guarantee victory. Today, information, coordination, and adaptability matter far more than how many tanks you can build. Ukraine has turned the battlefield into a chessboard, and with every clever move, they're proving that intelligence can defeat might. This shift in warfare philosophy could shape future conflicts around the world. There's also a deeper moral aspect to this story. For Ukraine, every victory like this one is not just a tactical achievement. It's a statement of defiance. It shows that even under invasion, even when the odds seem impossible, strategic thinking and unity can lead to triumph. For the soldiers who planned and executed this ambush, it was more than a mission. It was a message to Russia: we are not weak and we are not giving up. As cleanup operations continue and new footage emerges, the full scale of the destruction becomes clearer. Burnt-out shells of tanks and trucks stretch for kilometers, a haunting reminder of how quickly war can turn against the aggressor. Ukrainian engineers have already begun salvaging parts that can be reused, turning even the debris of war into tools for future defense. Internationally, this event has renewed discussions about the resilience and intelligence of Ukraine's military strategy. Analysts in the United States and Europe have pointed to this ambush as proof that Ukraine deserves continued support, not just because of moral duty, but because they're showing the world how to fight a modern war effectively. The ability to combine technology, discipline, and creativity in the face of overwhelming force is something that militaries everywhere are now studying closely. In the end, the destruction of 482 Russian vehicles in seconds will go down as one of the defining moments of this war. It's a stark example of how overconfidence and poor planning can doom even the most powerful armies, while courage, intelligence, and preparation can rewrite the course of history. Ukraine's genius trap will be remembered as a masterstroke, one that changed the rhythm of the conflict and reminded the world that strategy, not size, decides victory. So as we look at this remarkable moment, one thing becomes clear: Ukraine's fight is not just about defending land, it's about redefining warfare itself. Every ambush, every counterattack, and every tactical victory like this brings them closer to turning the tide once and for all. The world is watching, history is being written, and Ukraine has once again proven that brilliance on the battlefield can change everything.